Ancient evil awakens 3 Skinwalker encounters. 9 out of 10 people who hear this story double-check their door locks at night. In the remote Arizona mountains, a lone hiker discovered why Native Americans never whistle after sunset when that goat opened its mouth. What came out wasn't just a sound. It was an ancient warning that some trails are meant to stay untouched. Don't let darkness catch you unprepared. Subscribe to Native Legends and Horror Stories now. Because in the wilderness, not every whistle is calling you home. Deep in the Sonora Desert, where the ancient Navajo territories meet, modern Arizona's wilderness, there's a trail that doesn't appear on any official maps. Local indigenous elders speak of it in whispers, calling it the Path of Silence. A place where even birds know better than to sing. After sunset, it was July 2015 when Mike Chun, an experienced solo hiker, stumbled upon this forgotten path. The mercury hit 102 degrees Fahrenheit that day, typical for an Arizona summer. But something about the air felt different. The trailhead lay hidden behind a wall of drought-resistant creosote bushes, barely visible unless you knew exactly where to look. "I've hiked every marked trail in this county," Mike would later write in his journal. But this one, something felt off from the start. The desert has a way of speaking to you if you listen long enough. The narrow trail wound through a quarter-mile of sun-scorched desert before ascending a rocky mountain face. Dead juniper trees lined the path, their twisted branches reaching out like gnarled fingers. According to local Forest Service records, this area hadn't seen maintenance since 2010, when strange incidents prompted authorities to quietly remove it from official maps. The first whistle came at 3:47 p.m. and 3 distinct notes. Floating down from somewhere up the mountain, F-sharp A C-sharp, a perfect major triad no bird native to Arizona could produce. Mike's fingers instinctively tightened around his Swiss Army knife. "Just another hiker," he whispered to himself, words disappearing into the hot, still air. "Has to be." 20 minutes later, the same melody echoed again. Closer this time, close enough to raise the hair on Mike's arms despite the desert heat. Native American folklore speaks of the whistling, dark spirits that lure travelers off safe paths with familiar sounds. But such stories weren't on Mike's mind as he pressed forward. Around the next bend, a fallen ironwood tree blocked the path, its thorny branches forming an impenetrable barrier. As Mike circled around it, he discovered a small valley, likely an ancient riverbed from when this desert was still young. There in the center stood a crude shelter made of large branches arranged with an unnaturally geometric precision. Before he could process what he was seeing, the whistle came again right behind him. Mike's heart stumbled. He turned, ever so slowly, to face what he thought would be another hiker. Instead, he found himself staring into the eyes of a goat. But something was wrong. The animal stood nearly 4 feet tall at the shoulder, far larger than any mountain goat native to the region. Its eyes, they reflected no light, just 2 black pools fixed on Mike, with an intelligence that made his throat go dry. "Nice goat," Mike managed to croak out, taking one careful step backward. "Easy now." The goat's jaw dropped open at an impossible angle. What emerged wasn't a bleat, but that same perfect 3-note whistle. F-sharp A C-sharp. Mike ran. He ran like his ancestors ran from predators in the night, stumbling and sliding down the rocky path as that whistle echoed behind him one final time. When he finally reached his car, the sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of blood red. Years later, research into Navajo Skinwalker legends would lead Mike to a disturbing discovery. In 1922, a local shepherd reported losing an entire herd of goats in that same valley. The only survivor was one unusually large billy goat, found whistling a devil's song. That made the other animals follow it. Into the darkness, the shepherd shot the creature. But when he approached the body, he found only an empty skin. To this day, the trail remains unmarked. But every summer, hikers report hearing 3 distinct notes floating down from the mountain. F-sharp A C-sharp. A perfect major triad that no bird native to Arizona could produce. A second tale emerges from the shadows, this time from Wisconsin's dense forests, where summer camp traditions mask ancient dangers. In 1995, what began as an innocent children's revealed prank to young James Miller that some legends hunt under cover of childhood games. Every summer, 3 families, gathered at the Chippewa Valley campground, carrying on a tradition that stretched back to their own childhoods. Among their time-honored ritual was the infamous snipe hunt, a classic American camping prank dating back to the 1840s, where children would be sent into the woods at night, searching for a mythical creature. James's father Robert and Uncle Billy, not a real uncle but close enough, had perfected their snip hunt routine over the years. Their descriptions grew more elaborate each summer. They're quick as lightning, with razor-sharp beaks. Robert would say, eyes twinkling. They nest up in the trees waiting for nightfall. Remember last year's hunt? 8-year-old James whispered to his sister Amy, clutching his lucky stick. This time we'll catch one for sure. The second evening of their camping trip, Robert gathered all 7 children around the dying campfire. The sun had just dipped below the tree line, painting the sky in deep purples and blues. A chorus of cicadas filled the air with their evening song, "Kids." Robert's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Billy swears he heard one last night right outside his RV, says. It was making sounds like nothing he's ever heard before. He paused, building suspense. Who's brave enough to help us catch it? Wooden swords and sticks rose into the air as every child volunteered. The group set out into the darkening forest, flashlight beams dancing between the trees. Billy had gone ahead to scout the area, while Robert led the children deeper into the woods. 10 minutes into their adventure, branches rustled overhead. Before anyone could react, Billy burst from behind a large oak, face and arms covered in what looked like blood. Actually crushed raspberry juice. Screaming, "It got me! The snipe got me!" Chaos erupted. Children scattered in all directions, their screams echoing through the forest. James ran blindly through the underbrush, branches whipping at his face. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it over his own ragged breathing. Finally, he spotted a massive white pine with thick undergrowth, perfect for hiding, huddled in his makeshift shelter. James fought back tears. The forest had gone eerily silent. Number cicadas, no rustling leaves, just his own muffled breathing and the distant sounds of other children running. After what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, James dared to peek through the foliage. What he saw made his blood run cold. About 30 yards away, illuminated by patches of moonlight filtering through the canopy, stood something that defied explanation. It had the general shape of a dog, but everything about it was wrong. Its legs were unnaturally elongated and thin, like stilts made of bone. The creature's head hung at an angle that would have snapped a normal animal's neck. Patches of mangy fur clung to its body in random places, revealing gray skin underneath that seemed to ripple and shift in the darkness. A low keening moan drifted across the clearing. Not quite animal, not quite human. James wanted to run, but his body wouldn't respond. The longer he stared, the stronger the sensation of wrongness grew, along with an overwhelming sense of dread that his 8-year-old mind couldn't fully comprehend. "James, where are you, buddy?" His father's voice shattered the silence. "It was just a joke, I'm sorry." The creature's head snapped toward James with impossible speed, its eyes meeting his. They were completely black, reflecting no light at all. In that moment, time seemed to stop. James felt something ancient and alien examining him through those eyes, something that had no business existing in his world of summer camps and family pranks. The spell broke when his father's hand grabbed his arm, lifting him from his hiding spot. "God, you ran so far. Are you okay?" Robert's voice shook with genuine concern. "I'm so sorry, buddy. We didn't mean to scare you that badly." James barely heard him. He twisted around trying to spot the creature, but it had vanished without a sound. No breaking branches, no rustling leaves, just empty darkness between the trees. On the walk back to camp, James tried to tell his father about what he'd seen. "Dad, I think I saw a real snipe." The words sounded foolish. Even as he said them, Robert laughed nervously, squeezing his son's shoulder. "Number James, snipes aren't real. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It was just a silly game." For years afterward, James tried to rationalize what he'd seen. A coyote maybe, or a malnourished wolf, but Wisconsin wildlife reports showed no predators matching that description in the area. It wasn't until 2015, when he stumbled across articles about Skinwalker encounters in the Midwest, that James finally found stories that echoed his experience. To this day, Something changes in James's peripheral vision whenever he walks in the woods. A shadow that moves wrong, a glimpse of impossibly long limbs, a reminder that sometimes childhood monsters turn out to be real. After all, what happens when the peaceful solitude of wilderness living turns into something more sinister? In the remote forests of northern Canada, where paths between isolated cabins tell stories of community and survival, one family's encounter with an ancient evil would forever change their understanding of nature's mysteries. Mark Harrison spent a decade embracing the quiet life with his wife, Emma, and their 2 children in their secluded cabin. No paved roads lead to their home, just worn footpaths connecting them to other homesteaders scattered miles apart through the dense forest. Their little community thrived on trading vegetables from their gardens and sharing meals under star-filled skies. It's like stepping back in time, Emma would tell visitors, pride evident in her voice, as she showed off their thriving vegetable garden and small herd of cattle. The modern world feels a million miles away. The Harrisons' paradise began unraveling. On a moonless October night in 2008, Mark sat in his favorite armchair, the cabin's old kerosene lamp casting warm light across the pages of his book. The temperature outside had dropped to 27 degrees, far unusually cold for early autumn. At 11:40 p.m., the cattle's panicked movement caught his attention. Moving to the window, Mark watched his entire herd, 17 head of cattle, pressing themselves against the far fence, their breath forming frantic clouds in the cold air. Following their terrified gazes, he noticed something that made his own breath catch. A massive white-tailed deer, standing motionless in the tree line, even by Canadian standards, where deer grow larger than their southern cousins. This one seemed wrong. Its shoulder height alone suggested it would dwarf the average 140-pound buck. The deer remained perfectly still, its head fixed at an angle that seemed to defy natural anatomy. Mark later wrote in his journal, "I've hunted these woods for years. I've seen every kind of wildlife behavior imaginable, but nothing prepares you for the moment when you realize you're not looking at an animal. You're looking at something wearing an animal's shape." He tried to rationalize the encounter, pushing it aside as a trick of shadows and tired eyes. But 3 weeks later, Emma's terrified whisper in the dead of night proved their ordeal was just beginning. Mark, she breathed, her fingers digging into his arm. Listen, the sound crawled around their cabin walls, a slow, deliberate dragging that completed one full circuit before falling silent. Mark checked on their sleeping children, then grabbed his Winchester Model 70, inspecting each window at the last one. His heart nearly stopped there. It stood again. That impossible deer, its eyes now clearly visible in the darkness. What he saw sent ice through his veins, white sclera surrounding small human-like pupils. The next morning, Mark set out for his nearest neighbor's cabin, 3 miles through dense forest. The walk had never felt longer. Halfway there, dried leaves crackled behind him. Turning, he found himself 15 feet from the creature. Under direct sunlight, its disguise seemed to slip. The deer's form, rippling like heat waves off summer asphalt. The eyes, Mark would later write, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the pen. You know immediately that you're looking at something ancient. Something that was here long before us, wearing nature like we wear clothes. He ran the remaining distance to Tom Blackwood's cabin, nearly collapsing on his neighbor's porch. Tom's reaction wasn't what he expected. The older man's weathered face showed recognition rather than surprise as Mark described the deer with human eyes. "The Navajo have a name for them," Tom said quietly, pouring Mark a drink with steady hands. "Skinwalkers. They show themselves when they want something, or when you've disturbed something you shouldn't have." Tom's calm acceptance of the impossible proved more terrifying than any fear he could have shown. Mark hurried home, trying to convince himself that folklore couldn't explain what was happening to his family, but deep down he knew better. The Harrisons endured 3 more weeks of sleepless nights and shadowy glimpses before making their decision. Within a month they had relocated closer to town, leaving behind their dream of wilderness living. The thing wearing the deer's shape had taken more than their home. It had stolen their faith in the natural order of things. 15 years later, Mark has never told Emma or the children about his conversation with Tom, or about the human eyes that still haunt his dreams. Some truths feel safer left unspoken, but in the northern woods, where ancient powers still roam, the line between predator and prey isn't always what it seems. Sometimes the most dangerous creatures are the ones that can look right back at you. These three encounters, separated by thousands of miles, yet bound by ancient forces, remind us that some territories were never meant for human settlement. In the wild, places where cell phones fall silent and GPS signals fade, older laws still rule the night. Subscribe to Native Legends and History Stories now, because in the dark corners of North America, what watches from the shadows knows your name. Are you ready to face the truth our ancestors feared to speak?